various actors will share their experiences. And to open the floor for us, I will invite Professor Jane Nambuko, who is the Associate Professor at University of Nairobi and has done a lot of work on post-harvest management. She specializes in horticulture, but she's done a lot of research and which she also shares through outreach activities with the local communities. She's a big champion of food loss and waste reduction, and I will invite her up front. Welcome, Professor John Nambuko.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so today I won't even talk about what I do, but just highlight of this session, why it is important. And so I have to say I'm really happy to be part of this conversation on food loss and waste reduction and why it is important and why it matters actually for people, for nature, and for the environment. And we have to thank WRI for actually elevating this conversation to this level, because usually food loss and waste never comes up on matters climate change, okay? So we have gotten WRI thumbs up for raising the profile of this conversation, and we hope we stay there. So when there's COP, the voice of food loss and waste champion has to be heard, right? So why? Because food loss and waste is actually a very key piece in the puzzle towards addressing food and nutrition security in sustainable food systems, which are also environment friendly. I say that there is no doubt that we can produce enough food. Our smallholder farmers can produce enough food to feed us and even export. Is that true or false? It is true, yes? But as you'll be hearing later from the other speakers, yes, a lot of that food never gets to the consumer. It's never consumed, yes? So we use already stretched production resources, yes, whether it's water, land, yes, and production inputs, agro inputs, you know, the labor that goes into it. We use that. Those are already stretched production inputs. And then that food never gets to the consumer. And worse still, some of that food actually ends up where? In landfills. Is that true? Where it causes even more damage, okay? So it is really important, as we talk about sustainable food systems, as we talk about climate change, we really must elevate this discussion to where it matters so much. So the efforts to reduce food loss and waste must be embedded in all the, you know, whether we're talking about food and nutrition security, whether we're talking about better livelihoods, whether we're talking about economic empowerment of youth, of farmers, yes, climate change, sustainable cities. Talk about the 17 SDGs. Tell me any one of them and I'll tell you how food loss and waste contributes to that, okay? And so, of course, we know, we are probably the people in this room, we are familiar with the SDG 12, on sustainable consumption and production, which is the SDG that anchors our topic on food loss and waste, okay? But there are other SDGs that are actually affected or impacted by food loss and waste. So SDG 12 has set targets, 12.3, to halve losses by the year 2030. We have cascaded this to the continental level, and we have, maybe some of you heard about the Malabo commitments on agricultural transformation. So we have targeted to have the losses by the year 2025. This is about 2 years from now. What are we doing? For us to achieve those targets, we need individual and collective action by stakeholders in the agri-food sector, which is you and I, okay? We all have a role. And there is need to push for investment. Just like everybody here is pushing for investment into you know, climate smart actions, we need to push for investments in efforts, interventions to reduce food loss and waste, whether it is prevention of food loss, whether it is redistribution of food, whether it's reuse and recycling of food. All that requires innovation, okay? And we must you know, invest in that. But for us to attract or to push for investment in that, what do we need? We need evidence, Okay? We need evidence because for sure, I know Ambo is laughing because this is my story. You see, we can't go and just say, hey, food loss is important. Where is the evidence? Yes? Where is the evidence that in fact, food loss and waste, if we rescue the food, we can feed people? If we rescue the food, we can actually save, address climate issues. Where is that evidence? It's not there. What is there? What we're currently using are estimates, okay? Because this evidence is not there. Yes, we have innovations, we have technologies that could be used to address food loss and waste, but some of it is there, lying and commercialized. Some of it we need to do our own adaptive research, but nobody's invested in that, either adaptive research or commercialization of this research and innovation to address food loss and waste. So we must make a case. We must make a case for investment in food loss and waste reduction interventions. And for us to do that, we must generate that evidence, yes? So that people can understand. When I'm talking about food loss and waste, I can say, this is how much you're losing. This is why we're losing it. This is where we're losing it. And this is the impact of these losses, whether it's on climate change, on food and nutrition security, on whatever aspect. So we must stop looking at food loss and waste as an end in itself, but a contributor to greater societal problems. Like here, we're talking about climate change. We must link it if we are going to address it. So I was telling some people during lunch that I still go back to the data, the evidence, that somebody called me last week and they were asking for if I have some good data because they want to model the impact of food loss and waste on climate change and greenhouse gases. And I said, I don't have it because nobody is financing that collection of data. We have capacity as researchers to collect it. We can collect this data. We can collect the required evidence, which is important, but we need to make a case for it so that somebody can invest into it, so that we can collect that data, so that when we are talking, we're not talking generalities, we're not talking estimates, we're talking facts. Okay, and that is where we come in as researchers. So all said and done, I know I need to hand over the mic. We all have a role, yes? As stakeholders in the food sector, we all have a role. So let us all do our part, complement each other's effort, and we'll achieve the required impact on food loss and waste, and what we desire for it to contribute to climate change, to food and nutrition security, to empowerment of our farmers, and improving livelihood. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor. Let's give a round of applause for Professor for setting the stage for us when it comes to food loss and waste. As I invite Dr. James Wangu to provide even a more extensive framework in terms of why does it matter and why does it require action. I'm going to ask a very simple question in the house. How much does Africa lose in billions? So this is in monetary terms. How much does Africa lose every year when it comes to cereals? How much does Africa lose cereals annually? Anybody in the house? Any attempt? James, as you're coming up. Do we know? Globally then, how much do we lose globally? Great, then let us be ready to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Beryl. I'll take it from there. So my question is simple. Why must we address food loss and waste? And I hope this works. Yes. The first and the most obvious reason is that food insecurity and poverty. And for those that are keen on the issues of food and nutrition security, is that over the last 5 to 10 years, food loss and waste, rather food insecurity has been going up. That map over there shows you the trajectory. 2015 is when we adopted the SDGs, but as you can see, rather than improving the situation, we've been getting far, far worse. The question was, how much cereals do we lose to food loss and waste? And the question is an estimate of 4 billion. Actually, it's billion, sorry, it's not million. And this amount of loss could feed up to 40 million people every year. So this sort of shows that the idea is not just about feeding the people, it's also about alleviating poverty, especially given that most of our communities depend on agriculture for their livelihoods. I'd like to also mention, this was, actually we intended to have a Mentimeter to prompt this question to you, but our system hasn't been successful. But when it comes to fruits and vegetables, we lose up to 50%. Yet, 1 in 2 children in Africa are suffering from malnutrition, especially micronutrients. The second reason is one that is very much connected to this climate summit, and that is that we lose food and we lose food, we waste food, yet this food has been, or other people have spent a lot of resources, land resources, water resources, energy resources. And the second most important thing is the expansion. If we don't have enough food, people will like to find other ways to produce food, and often it's usually not this rather technological innovation like agrophonic, or rather, I don't know if that's a correct word, but it tend to get into expansion, into forests, into natural ecosystem, and this obviously drive degradation. Oh yeah, the last one. Again, connecting to climate summit. Food loss and waste obviously negatively impact climate, and the numbers shows that if food loss and waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter. So this was supposed to like emphasize on to why we really need to address food loss and waste. And I believe the next presenter will be sort of showcasing some of the innovations that are out there to address this issue. So I'd like to invite Tarash, and I can ask the technology to do the thing, and over to you, Tarash.
I quite enjoy my day job because we've heard doom and gloom, and I hopefully am here to offer you some solutions. My name is Talash Hybris, and I'm the CEO of InsectiPro, and I'll tell you what I do a bit later. But first, what is the opportunity? So 1 in every 5 people will be African by 2030, and 1 in every 4 by 2050. And this means we need more food, we need more everything. But for us, the most interesting statistic to look at is waste. So here I'd just like to highlight 2 things. 19 of the world's 50 biggest dump sites are found in Africa. And right now we're doing 174 million tons of waste, but that number is expected to increase to 516. What are we going to do with all this waste? Just keep this in mind for later. What we're looking at is the food loss. So food loss you find at farm level, in terms of storage, ugly fruits and vegetables, failed crop growth. It's a very interesting angle. You have food at the market level and at consumer level. And as Professor Jane mentioned, all of this ends up in dump sites. So we've been looking at the different kinds of interesting innovations in our field. And I'd just like to highlight a few of them at these different levels. So the first one is Kafresh. It's going the wrong way. Change hands. The first one is Kafresh. This is a company in Uganda who are manufacturing a sort of liquid spray. It's made out of only 4 ingredients. It's completely natural. And you spray it on your fruits and vegetables, and in ambient temperatures, even in very hot temperatures. I don't know if anybody here has been to Kampala. You see it stays fresh for 14 days, and with avocados and mangoes, they've gotten them to a 30-day shelf life period. So you have less fruits and vegetables being wasted due to bad storage conditions, and you have more going to the market. Another cool innovation is from our friends in Kenya, Farm to Feed. They collect all the ugly fruits and vegetables from the farmer, so the farmer still has income for his, I guess, offcuts. And they take it And they take it to the marketplaces. You can find them in Art Cafe, but they're also being used for like industrial food processing. So this is less food loss, less food wastage. The third interesting innovation we've seen in our industry is Ugavi. Ugavi is a marketplace that directly connects farmers to the marketplace without brokers in between. So here you kind of see direct marketplace connections, less food loss, less food waste. Are these interesting, Professor Jane? Gladly. And now I get to tell you a bit about what we do. So I come from InsectiPro, where we deal with food waste. We were founded in October of 2018, and the biggest, most interesting fact here is right now I care for over 1 billion insects. I see a lot of you are pulling faces because you're like, oh, doo-doos, but doo-doos are a very important part of our future. Just a short video to see what we'll do, and please laugh at our puns. We find them very funny. Am I fighting with the controller? Oh, there we go. We're in Limuru, Kenya. We're a team of 150. Our bugs are fed to animals. We also have bugs for human nutrition. I think there you saw 2 different types of bugs. No, can we skip forward? We believe by implementing insects and insect products into our current food chain, we can produce more food on less land. More food with higher nutrients, and more locally sourced food. Nina looks very happy, so that makes me happy. We have 2 change makers at InsectiPro. You saw them in the video. We have the black soldier fly, which eats waste and transforms it into high-value protein and fertilizer. And we have our crickets for our human nutrition program. The rest of my presentation will focus on BSF because they are the cool insects that are creating circular economies within food systems. Like I said, yeah. Animal protein, so they're replacing fish meal and soy in animal feeds. But what I want to show you is that very cool graphic there. So over the past 5 years of InsectiPro, we've upcycled 15,000 metric tons of organic waste, which was headed to landfills, and transformed it into fertilizer, which goes back into horticulture, used in regenerative agriculture practices, and then protein, which replaces fish meal and soy in animal feed. I think till now we've fed over 1 million chickens and irrigated 3,000 acres of land. Looking at my team and they're nodding yes, so those numbers are true. What we see our bugs working in are feed, like I said, food. Nina, too many graphics. Consult and agri. If you can get to the last one. Feed, sorry, this is very messy. So black soldier flies are cool. First, the bottom fact, the adult flies don't have a mouth, so they don't have the ability to sting or bite people, and that also means that they can't transfer diseases. They are also really cool because they're more than 40% protein, making them a very good replacement for soy and fish meal, and all the things that you need to grow are found in large quantities in the black soldier fly. After a protein transition, our next biggest problem will be energy, and energy comes from fats, which you also find in insects. What we've been seeing in the field is that our bugs are producing better chicken and fish. So chicken are taking 2 weeks less to grow. Fish are growing 37% faster, and pigs are taking 4 to 6 months to grow instead of 6 to 8 months to grow, so then farmers can also do more cycles per year. This is some really interesting coming out not just of the lab, but also like field tests with all our different farmers. Our second solution, and what is really exciting us right now at InsectiPro, is our agri work. So insect poop has a lot of value. We're seeing 30% increase in yield across the different cash crops in coffee, sorghum, tea, and maize. And then what we're also seeing, and what is very exciting, is we're seeing that the BSF have this shell, so every time they grow, they leave behind a shell. The shell is full of chitin, and chitin is showing to have a bit of disease eradication. So in our potato fields and our cabbage fields, we got nematodes down to 0%. And then we're also seeing effect in aphids and different bacterial responses in the soil. So our agri work is really exciting me. As you can tell, I'm trying to talk a bit faster. It's also what wakes us up in the morning. And this is Anne, and I'll let her tell you her story.
Juu nikiangalia miaka hiyo ingine nimelima sijawahi lima hii. Hata kuna rafiki mwingine amelima mtama. Alikuja jana kaniambia your work is good. And I was very happy.
Mimi naitwa John Kiambati Rokaria. Kwetu ni Rwanyange.
Na mimi naitwa Ana Kiambati huyu.
Hii mbolea ya tunaona ni nzuri kwa sababu hata ukiangalia hii sorghum tumepanda.
Ile imewekwa na ile hajawekwa iko na tofauti kubwa. Ile imewekwa still iko green na iko na weight. Ukiangalia iko na weight iko hiyo ingine. Na najua tukivuna hiyo itakuwa na uzito mingi kuliko hiyo ingine. Juu inaonekana hii fertilizer ni mzuri. Tena kwa rotuba itakuwa nzuri juu inaongezea mchanga rotuba zaidi ya ile fertilizer ya kawaida tunanunua.
So she started off in a quarter acre. We got her from 400 kilos harvested to 660. So quite a big yield increase, and all of it was done, with a bit more regenerative agriculture practices. We saw better water retention in the soil, and we saw thicker sorghum stems so they could withstand more wind. So what we're hoping to do is use small bugs to make a big impact. In feed by 2025, we're hoping to feed 9 million chicken with sustainably produced feed. And then, like I said, they have a lot of poop. This translates to 13,000 acres a year under BSF poop. And this will cost us 120,000 metric tons, which is around 100,000 tons of carbon that has been offset. With our consult program, we've trained 3,000 farmers, looking to train 10,000 farmers in the next 2 years. And then food, which I haven't really talked about, but is a very big part of our business. We're looking to feed 10,000 children on, sustainably produced insect porridge. What does this mean in terms of future protein implication? We need to scale. We're big, but we're small. We need consistent raw material supply. We need to do a bit more B2C knowledge transfer with our European partners. We need a bit more of a friendly regulatory environment. But if you look at the market, there's huge potential. BSF is expected to hit 2.6 billion by 2030, and the edible insect market is growing 47% year on year. And we live in Africa, so we have the perfect climate to grow insects. And we believe InsectiPro is where sustainability and profitability meet, making us a company of the future. If you're still bugging for more, please see Nina.
Thank you very much, Talash. Let's give a round of applause for Talash and for the good work. Yeah, so this is demonstration of locally led innovations and how much impact it can have. We have similar experiences happening across East Africa. And for the next session, I'm going to invite different experts to join me up. And I'll begin with Dominic Savio, who is the CEO of Golden Insect, from Rwanda. Sorry about that. And I will also be joined by Winnie Egon, who is a food systems analyst, and her work focuses, on assessing various components of the food systems and improving it. And currently she's leading work on supporting Kenya to develop a post-harvest management strategy. Winnie, join us up front, please. We also have Wamboi Mbarire, who is the CEO of we call it RETRAC, the Retail Trade Association. And she's well respected in the region when it comes to retail issues. She's currently championing food safety when it comes to sourcing, transport, and distribution. But she's also working with other stakeholders to look at the possibility of amending or working on policies to allow for food redistribution as a way of mitigating food loss and waste. And I also have Dr. Robert Mbeche from JKUAT, that is Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. He is a social scientist, but with a wealth of experience in leading and conducting multidisciplinary research. And he's worked a lot on agri-food systems, climate change issues, and resilience. And lastly, I have Makena Ireri, who is director at Global GIAP. Yes, it's a very hard abbreviation. She's laughing. She'll help me with that. Yeah, but it's energy for people and planet. At least that one you will find it. And so, allow me to begin with Dominic. You have seen what Talash has presented in terms of the work that she's doing in Kenya, and a lot of progress has been made. It's been very impactful, and there's still more opportunities for this. Kindly tell us, what is your experience in Rwanda, and what are you doing when it comes to circularity of food systems?
Thank you very much. I've lost my voice, but still I can make it. I'm Dominic Savio Imbabazi, agriculture engineer academically, professionally, and insect breeder in Rwanda, and the pioneer of insect breeding in Rwanda. I run a company called Golden Insect. What do we do? I do collect biowaste, food waste from hotels and restaurants, from households, and also I collect farm waste and animal manure and agroforestry trees. Apart from what Tarash does, I do vermiculture. This earthworms, still something that is distracting, but earthworms, the red worms or the California worms. And I take all the food waste, then I put there the red worms. The red worms, they eat and they eject high quality organic fertilizers, which is able to substitute chemical fertilizers. And with that, I give the fertilizer to farmers, and farmers, they produce food, and the food goes back to the hotels, and the hotels give me the waste again. So it's a cycle. In brief, this is what I'm doing. And up to now, I'm able to produce, we are producing organic fertilizer that is able to fertilize 1,000 hectares in 1 year. So this is where we are now.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. And we will come back to you so that we have a bit of comparison in terms of the challenges and maybe the opportunities for private sector. But allow me to move on to Winnie and to ask you that you have seen what Talash is saying, and especially in the last slide. And I'm asking where you are sitting, and as someone who's leading the post-harvest management strategy development. What is it all about, and how does it fit into this whole matrix of food loss and food waste reduction?
Thank you, Beryl, and congratulations to Talash. That is very impressive work. I think we should have her clap. These are the young people giving us solutions to the problems that we have. We are indeed working on a strategy that is going to contribute to supporting actors like Talash, among others, in addressing food loss and waste. And it fits in strategically. It is a strategy, and it fits in strategically because the strategy is addressing a need, and the need is already being met. However, we took a step back and we asked ourselves, so we do have interventions going towards addressing food loss and waste, but we don't have a roadmap. So it becomes really hard to track progress if we don't have like a guiding framework on what we are doing, because beyond what Talash is doing, beyond what a colleague from Rwanda is doing, there are so many interventions across the value chain. So we took the value chain approach within the agri-food system space. So we have actors that are addressing food loss from the production, and we have those that are addressing it from the redistribution, we have those that are utilizing the food waste. But when you look at the hierarchy of addressing food loss and waste, we first start with prevention, then we go to the redistribution, reuse, and recycling. So we recognize that in Kenya we do not have a roadmap to track the progress. So various organizations are addressing this issue, various partners, a lot of investment is going to it. But going back to what Prof mentioned on data, without a strategy, it becomes hard to coordinate all these different actors within the space. So the strategy is really coming in to support the coordination of efforts so that we can track the progress. And just to mention, the strategy is also anchored to the SDG goal 12. It's also anchored on the AU strategy and the IGAD strategy. So the strategy is coming to support needs that are already being met.
Thank you so much for highlighting the place of the strategy in terms of addressing this food waste. I want to move on to Wambui in terms of a component of what she's saying is actually the redistribution, right? But before we get to the redistribution, I'm curious to see what is the private sector or retailers, what is their place and role? Because I think along the food value chain, we have consumption, we have production, distribution, and then we have, you know, the retailers where now households buy from. What do you think would be their place?
I like to start the conversation with asking, how many people had lunch today? Put up your hand if you had lunch today. I can't see the hands. It needs to be higher if you had lunch. Okay, how many people left food on their plate? Again, honest answer. So they say the largest source of food waste is on your plate. In Kenya, the statistic that Jane likes to quote is that every Kenyan loses 99 kilos of food on your plate because you serve, sip, and think, doesn't taste the way I wanted it. And it's self-service. So I always say, finish your food if you served yourself. So the role of retailers is to bridge the gap. So one of the things we have seen, if we take fruits and vegetables, for example, brought into the supermarket, how do we ensure that what we receive is fully utilized? One, when you sell, there's always remnants. So to absorb that, a lot of the retailers, and let me specifically talk to the supermarket, then use whatever is not sold at the end of the day to cook, because we have ready food that's been sold in a supermarket. That's how we deal with. And then fruits, we do juices. We're looking into also processing dried fruits, etc. In terms of FMCG, now this is flours and jams, etc. There we have a challenge. For most retailers, their supply agreement says within 2 weeks, send it back to us. Within 2 weeks of expiry date, send it back to us. But we don't know what happens then. So we've taken an initiative to try and bring in policy to ensure that we have what we're calling guidelines and a framework for redistribution, because that is good food that could go in, that is suitable for human consumption, but normally would get lost or wasted, or God forbid, repackaged and come back into the market, and we're not sure about the safety. So to put in line safeguards to ensure that that food that is fit for human consumption goes to human consumption and does not become pig feed as normally happens.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that elaborate response and for creating awareness in terms of the solutions that could actually be provided. To you, Dr. Robert, do we have sufficient evidence? Are there gaps that we need to fill? Are people aware? Because when I began, I asked a question, and it seems like people don't even know the magnitude.
Thank you very much. I think I wish to begin by saying that there is something that we know. We know that a big part of our food is lost or wasted. That we know, but whether that evidence is solid is, as Jane mentioned earlier, it's indicative in most cases, but we know that, for example, we have more losses in fruits and vegetables compared to, for example, cereals or grains. We also know that over the last 10 years, for example, the methodologies of assessing food loss and waste have been improving, have been more strengthened. For example, in 2019, the FAO Food Index, a number of other organizations, WRI that has put together this, has developed a protocol, Wageningen and others, that are trying to standardize the procedures. Nonetheless, the evidence, especially in our context in sub-Saharan Africa, is far and in between. It's like when I look at cereals, for example, maize, you look at 2013 is when we had the most robust study. For mangoes, maybe 2015. So 7 years later, we do not know quite what has happened during that period. The other thing that we have a clear gap is that there are these global protocols, but we have not been able to contextualize them to our context. Often, we have not even contextualized them to the specific value chains. Reason is because there will be differences in which food is lost or wasted across different value chains. And lastly, and not least, is that the understanding of the impacts of interventions is very, very limited. All we are working with are and without prejudice claims, is that this is able to deliver this. And I think if, for example, the evidence was solidified, then there can be more investments into these interventions. And also the trade-offs that come, because when you reduce food loss or waste, they can have another negative impact elsewhere. And because of time, I'll stop. And
thank you very much. Thank you so much. And to McKenna, what is the place and the role of energy?
Energy is crucial, and not just because I'm from the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. So there you go.
Thank you, Jill.
And I say it's crucial because at every step of the value chain, you have energy interventions, right? Whether you're producing the food itself, or transporting it, or processing it, or storing it. There are energy interventions all the way. But not just any energy. I mean, we are at a climate summit. We're not going to talk about energies for energy's sake, right? So it needs to be clean energy, because if we continue powering our agriculture with diesel, we are not only exacerbating climate change, but we are also unnecessarily taxing farmers as the price of diesel keeps going up. And there's a lot to be done here with cheap, renewable energy. And so at GEAP, one of the things we are working on is reducing the cost of that energy, coming from 60 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the current cost of renewable energy, to around 20 cents. And that will really outcompete diesel. Diesel maybe is at 40, 50 cents per kilowatt hour, and we know as scarcity and as everyone pushes to net zero, that's just gonna keep going up. So if we wanna not only support food loss prevention, but also enable our farmers, we need to invest in that low-cost energy. But what does that energy do? So practically, it can be used for processing. We heard about the grain losses. Those can be converted into a form that can be kept for longer or sold in other different forms. Cold storage, the fruits and vegetables, if those were stored as close to the farm as possible, in the right kind of environment, we could save a lot of that. And I'm smiling at Jane because the first cold store I saw was at the Nairobi University lab, and now there are many across Kenya. And so I think there's a massive role for energy here. And we are working both at the ends of reducing the cost, but also integrating this technology, funding it, and enabling it to get into farmers' hands. Because not only is it about food loss, but it also has this added benefits of climate resilience, helping farmers to adapt to this changing climate, localizing our food so that we don't have to import as much as we usually do, and increasing their livelihoods. So centering people as we think about how energy can support food loss.
Thank you so much. You have heard from our panelists on the interlinkages that exist in policy, research, energy, and also private sector engagement. I want to take one or two questions from the audience. Okay, you were first. Yes, you could go. I don't know if there's a microphone. Oh, okay, you might have to come up.
Hi everyone, I'm Zinzi from UN and other organizations that I'll not mention because of time. I have two questions. My first question goes to Professor Jen. We keep complaining as researchers, as scientists, that we do not have enough data to support our indications, our probabilities, our suggestions. What are we doing to bridge this gap? How are we involving young people in research so that we put as much output and evidence there? My second question goes to the lady with a very tough name. Yes, in my community work, I've realized that most people complain that they want to recycle waste, they want to use waste for other purposes, but they cannot find enough waste, which is ironic. I don't know if you experience the same problem and how you're addressing it when it comes to organic waste. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Jane, very, very short to the point in terms of data, and then Talash will take half a minute, and I'll also ask Dominic to to have half a minute so that we have variety of opinions.
Okay, for me, like I said in my statement, that we have capacity to generate that data. just like Prof there said, as a research institution, we have students. And part of the work we do is research. And we could actually, how do we say, we could actually generate that evidence. We just need some investment, because collecting data requires resources. So, yeah, that is my short answer.
Thank you. And Dr. Mbeche, is that the same feeling?
Yes, I wanted maybe just to add that as part of this challenge and through the support of WRI, one of the things we are trying to do is to contextualize the protocols that are at very global level so that they are contextualized in the local context and develop guidelines. And we will be having a discussion with the retailers, with private sector and other people, so that then we can develop protocols which can actually collect credible data. So that is the step that I think WRI has chosen to support. And if that can be done, it can be a step forward in delivering this more credible data. Thank you.
Thank you. For additional information, they are available. Talash, how do you manage the issue of waste?
So I actually agree with what your colleagues think. Aggregation is a very big problem in the industry because you have household waste, you have industrial waste, you have consumer waste. So what we did is we started with the easiest waste form, which is industrial, because it comes already pre-segregated. But if you want to move into like more household waste, then you need to think about separation locations, what are you going to do with the materials that you don't want to use. That becomes a whole other thought process.
Thank you. And Dominic was telling me his approach to getting waste, right? In half a minute.
Yes, thank you. Me, what I do awareness from household to household. I also train hotels and the restaurant, the managers, so that I don't need I only need bio-waste. So the other stuff, they stay there, and the companies that are in charge of collecting waste, they take these ones to the dump site or to where, I don't know. Me, I need bio-waste. This is the mode I use. But to do that, I collaborate with the local readers. They just give me letters to present to household, because you cannot go to knock at every door. You say, I need bio-waste. They won't accept. So but once you have a letter from local authority from my country, they accept. And then I train them, and I show them the impact. And then after, I do sometimes give them bonus, small bonus for them, so that they give me the food waste. For farm waste, still the same. When it's a growing time, I go and I tell farmers, I will need this. For example, bean straw, maize straw, these stuffs. Still for the animal farmers, I do the same thing. It's campaigning, because most of them, they don't even know the value addition for the food waste. So I tell them what will happen. But the other things, like back, I give them high quality organic fertilizer from what they gave me, and from that, they use them in their farms. They do for you. And as the time goes by, they start believing in me, and they keep giving me things, because they will believe they'll be having the final product of high quality for their farms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Winnie, you had a point, but I hope your question is answered. Winnie?
Yes, I just wanted to add a bit on the data. The challenges with standing of different methodologies and different protocols. While developing the strategy, we did find data. People have data. Unfortunately, we keep the data to ourselves, because at the beginning of every program, you will do a baseline. But where do the baselines go? So that is one of the solutions the strategy is seeking to address by proposing to have like a way of coordinating all the actors within the space addressing food loss and waste to collect the data, have a data repository so that we can share the data. I'm sure in the room, we have people that are actually collecting the data. So I think there are different angles to approach the data. We do need to collect the data, but what do we do with what we already have? Because you can't keep saying we have no data.
Thank you. I think that goes to the point where we said there is some data, but the bigger question is it sufficient, or do we need to fill it up as we go, right? I'm going to take one final question if there is any burning. Otherwise, I will direct a couple questions to the panelists. Okay. All right. To you, McKenna, are there any interventions already in food loss and waste, and that you think could be scaled up as we wind up?
Yeah, I think the most ready, or the one we've seen a lot, is the integration of cold storage as close to the farm gate as possible. Because we do have cold chains, in some African countries. Not extensive one, but there are some that are there, but they do start very far away from the farmer. So between the farm gate and where the aggregation center is, you find there's a lot of post-harvest loss, especially in that space. So bringing renewable energy, especially decentralized renewable energy, putting it together with a cold store as close to the farmer as possible. We have companies in Nigeria like Cold Hubs doing that, Inspira Farms in Kenya and Rwanda, Soko Fresh also in Kenya, although they also support at the other end of the value chain. But I think this has a lot of promise because you're plugging into an existing chain, and also because these tend to be very high value produce as well, very nutritious, very high value. So it's a kind of waste we really want to avoid.
Thank you so much. Allow me to stop there, and thank you very much, my panelists. As we end, how much do Africa lose in terms of cereals? $1 billion. How much? Yes. 4 billion. How much do we get? How much GHG emissions do we get from food loss and waste? 0? No, X. What's the GHG emissions from food loss and waste globally? All right, let me rephrase my, sorry? 4.4 gigatons, right? Or an equivalent of 8 to 10% of the total global GHG emissions. Thank you so much for your time. I think what's coming out of this is, one, there's definitely opportunity to increase our data collection and data coordination, right? We could think about platforms, think about protocols and how that could help us to measure and then to target and then to reduce. Because if you don't have sufficient evidence, you cannot take action, right? And the second thing is that developing strategic policy like what we're calling the post-harvest management strategy provides a framework for different actors to plug in and to actually actively be engaged in post-harvest reduction. And then also the retail sector has a lot of promise. In fact, they are the first target we should think of in terms of reducing food loss and waste. And the private sector is not left behind, right? They're already doing something. And I think in another conversation, we were thinking about standards. How do we ensure that this produce can actually be sold and be available even in supermarkets, right? So right now they're sort of siloed, but how do we ensure that they're available for those who want to actually use organic farming? And so there's a lot that can happen, and the things that we need to do, and it is for us to think about those solutions. Thank you all for coming and for joining us. May you give a round of applause for our panelists.